All right. Today we're going to talk, as we talked about, go over the last test, whatever you want to call it, the thing we did for the BMI. Go over it. And remember, Ms. Zika is coming. Let's see how long this takes. If it doesn't take that long, what I'd like to do, and I want to print these out, but I'll go over, like, for instance, here's a means, and I don't think he minds. And if he does, he isn't missed. So, I mean, but I'm supposed to let you know. So, for instance, a mean is missed once. All right. And I'm supposed to let you know that. Then I'm supposed to do the same thing from the grade book. I'm not going to show that. All right. But you get the idea. And I'm supposed to meet with each one of you just for a couple minutes on that particular stuff. So if there's time, maybe we can even do that today, because I think it's going to take quite a bit of time on Monday to go over that test. All right, or redo the test as a class, or whatever we want to call it. So when people are done, I'm going to just grab the same one that's on there. I copied it, but I got so much junk on here, I'm not sure where I copied it from. So when you guys are all done, I'll just open it from the flash drive as well. Found some kind of neat Bootstrap editors, which you may or may not have heard about. Where are they? That's not it either. Oh, where'd I put 'em? That's it. That's not what I want. I want that one. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen this before or not, so I just thought I would show it to you. There are a few, literally, some built-in Bootstrap editors that are free. And there's one that's called layoutit.com. Thank you. And literally, they claim that it's drag and drop. I don't know. I've never used it. I just found this out yesterday. Pingendo.com and Bootply.com. Bootply is kind of a neat product because they claim they've got a thing on their site that if you put in Bootstrap 3 and you click a button, it'll convert it to Bootstrap 4 for you. All right? And I'm not sure how it works, or how well it works, but just so you know that. Colin was working this morning, and we did a project in Bootstrap 3 because I'd already had it done, and he wants to convert that and what they're working on for their midterm to Bootstrap 4. And so he just put it in, boom, 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 nothing worked. And he said he made a couple superficial changes based on an article that I gave him on migration and on this thing, and it worked fine. So there's also some free Bootstrap tutorials, and I know you know about at least some of these sites, but there's other sites too. There's blacktie.co, bootstrapzero.com, and bootsnip.com. The wrapbootstrap.com is not free. All right. So I get if you're interested in some of that stuff, fine. If you're not, then I just wasted a few minutes here live. I'm expecting that by now, when you are creating a project, you know, we talked about this yesterday, but I just wanted just to kind of reiterate one more time that you are able to create it, if asked, you are able to create a site that's got a master page, and you're able to put the pages in as content pages. You are able to set up some kind of a Bootstrap Jumbotron or something similar to that, and it should look presentable. You could argue and say I should have had a wider or a bigger image. I'm not even going to fight with you on that. I did center it. I did a little work to do that so it looks a little nicer. And I'm not saying that, by no means is this the best looking site in the world. No, it's not. All right, but you should be able to create something like that. Yes.
Can you pull up our copy or the one you gave us?
It's up to you. Well, I'm going to be going over my copy.
Okay.
All right.
Gotcha.
Now, and just so you know, I still don't have Tiffany's, even though she said it was on there. And Evan, I still don't have yours. I believe you when you say you thought you put it on there, but I can show you the stuff I have, and it's not with that stuff. So, all right. So if we take a look at it from the top, so to speak, all right. So the first thing we had was that home page. And the only thing that I had in there for code was when you click the Go to Inputs button just to redirect you there. That was it. All right. And when we look at the page that's here, again, I've been doing a lot of work with this. I'm working on the key for the test, and I've been changing it around a lot in Bootstrap to try to make it look better, see how it looks when I do some stuff. I've been putting in phantom columns so I can try to center things so it looks a little bit better, etc. You'll have to see if you agree or don't agree. But you were asked to come in here and actually go out to one of the sites that I gave you and grab some of that information, which is exactly what I did right here. All right. I set it up as 2 columns. I thought it looked better that way. Again, you may or you may not agree with that. All right. And as far as the styling for this, and I'm not going to lie, I had some problems getting, you know, there appear, in my opinion, you may or may not agree with this, but there appear to be some inconsistencies between using Bootstrap and using Bootstrap inside of ASP.NET. And what I mean is, some of the stuff that I'm able to do if I'm just writing a web page using padding, etc., doesn't work very well in ASP.NET. All right, even some simple commands. I mean, I came in here and I tried to come in here to this body thing. Now, I'm not going to try it now because, of course, now it would probably work. But I just came in here and I said background red. You know, something simple like it didn't take it. And I have no idea why it didn't take it. So let's just, for the heck of it, like I said, if it's a red background now, it didn't. Okay? Nothing's red. You know, nothing that I can see in there is red. All right? Now, it did come up here, and I was able to put in some padding because I sure didn't like the way that that looked when that was bumped up like that. Again, you may or may not agree as we go through this with the stuff that I've done. And the last thing in the world I would expect would be for you to make yours and have it look just like mine. No, well, why would I do that? All right. Now with the image, I was able to go in there and kind of force it by doing that. And how did I know that? I just started Googling the hell out of everything. Every time I did something. Yes.
Why wouldn't it work? Because I had to do the same thing, but like it wouldn't work with any kind of
What wouldn't work?
like the center, the image center.
Like I said, you did it like this?
Yeah, I had to, but like Google like the normal ways to do it.
Yes. No, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if there is some inconsistency running Bootstrap inside of ASP.NET as far as what takes precedent over what. I really and truly don't know. I guess I don't know enough about it to be able to answer that question. All right. But like I said, I know that putting something margin 0 auto, we've learned that before, that's the way that we can center something. So literally I started Googling, and I Googled how to center an image in a Bootstrap Jumbotron. That's what I Googled. And I tried 2 or 3 ways that they had in there, none of them worked. And I tried this one, and it worked. All right, so why didn't the other ones work? I wish I knew. All right. And the only other thing that I had in there was just that I did have an error class. Okay? All right. As far as the inputs go, which was the next page that was here, again, you were supposed to put that into a table. Now, I put the validators in there. You may or may not. I don't remember if I told you that you had to put validators. I really and truly don't remember. But I put in required field validators for all fields. In fact, I think you were told to do that. And for the height and the weight, they were both required and they had to be within a certain range. All right. The other thing, and again, this may not, you might hear me say this, and well, that's not really important, but I just do want to mention things as I think of them. On this page, so this is what the page looks like when you run it. And again, I could have went to the home page and just clicked it also, but just so you see this, all right? Notice what I don't have there. You may or may not have noticed. That's the page is called inputs, and I had you call it inputs for a reason. You really shouldn't have BMI on that page. You really shouldn't have status on that page. This page is solely set up to be your inputs. Does that make sense to everyone? All right. Because like I said, I haven't graded them yet, but that's the kind of thing that I'm going to be looking for. All right. You also should all be sophisticated enough users. When you look over here, you can tell that I used zebra striping. All right, alternate striping. You should be doing stuff like that. That's just adding the table stripe class. And that's all you have to do. But it's much easier, and when you're doing stuff like this, you want to make it as easy as possible for the person entering information into the program, all right, and for the person who's going to be looking at the information in the program. Now, when you think about this, and again, you may or may not agree with what I'm about to say, which is fine. But if I go to the doctor's office, and let's see, because they usually do that. They take my height, and they take my weight, all right, and they take my blood pressure. We didn't go to that extreme, but you get the idea. They do all that stuff, all right? And then they do enter it typically into the computer. Who does that? I'm asking you a question. Who does that? Yes. Who doesn't do that? The doctor. So the doctor is more concerned with the outputs page. And the doctor has to assume that the nurse put the stuff in there correctly. Does that make sense? The reason I'm telling you that is a lot of times what you're going to have at any company of any size is the person who's going to, who is going to be inputting this information. Of course, they want to input it and look at it and make sure they get the right stuff, correct? But then what they're going to end up doing is then they're going to say, okay, I need you now to the programmer or to somebody to create reports that do this. Those reports are going to be made for management, all right? In much the same way, now notice if I calculate with nothing in there, I do get my stuff, all right? I'll be looking for that, okay, that they're required fields. So if I come in there, and now if I put in this, and this, and I click, all right, I'm going to look for that. God bless you. Does that make sense? When you're told to sit there and make fields required fields, all right, then you should be sure that indeed they're checked. All right, so if I come in here now and put in this, and then click calculate, now it brings me over to here. This is the other thing I'm going to look for. Does that make sense? All right. This is the actual code that is going to figure out based on your height, based on your weight. All right. And the only reason that I put sex in here or gender was because eventually we may want to modify this program, not in this class, but if we were creating it for someone, because there are different scales for males and females. All right? But for now, I just wanted to be honest with you, the reason I did that was so we'd have a radio button to put in. All right? That was the main reason for putting that in there. All right. And I think I've told you before, where mine falls apart is right there. I can go there, but it's not pushing my stuff in there. All right. So let's take a quick look. I already showed you the inputs. All right. And I'm looking here. One thing I was looking at, which I thought was interesting. Okay, let's see. That is a required field. All right. For the first name, the last name, and the first name. They're both required. But when I looked at this and I ran it and I left everything out, oh yeah, it did capture them. Okay. But notice what I have. Height is a required field. Weight is a required field. I must not have put messages in, all right, for first name and last name, because they are required fields. They're being caught here, but I didn't put any message with them. Does that make sense? And if you don't know what I'm talking about, when you take a look over at the code, what you'll notice, that's the one for the test. What do we have here? Is that when you get down to the height and the weight, there is error message equals. And looking at that, my guess is I don't have an error message equals for the first name or the last name. So I should have had those in there too. So this should have said first name is a required field. And then going down to here, this should have said last name is a required field. Now if I come in here, and click, now I get all of them. Does that make sense? All right. I'm not sure how we'll do this in the future, but again, probably, if you look, I think I've got the, where is that? No, that's the other one. I have not graded anyone's yet. I really and truly have not. But I started to look at this, okay? And, well, 20 points to create a master page. Okay, that maybe is good, I don't know. But it's 20 points possible based off of these four things. All right? So the reason that I'm telling you that is if there's something that's in here, for instance, let's just assume you forgot to put the footer in. All right? You lose 5 points if there's no footer whatsoever. Okay? But the other the other thing I'm trying to tell you is you have to be able to follow instructions. These are your requirements. And there have been times during my career as a programmer where I thought that the requirements that I was given were just, for lack of better words, stupid. All right? And you'd never say to the person you're doing the project for, you know, you have really stupid requirements. All right? Especially if they're paying you money and you're not working directly for them. But you try to say to them, hey, do you realize that maybe you want this or you don't need this type of thing? That's always okay. All right. But the reason I'm telling you that is I'm going to be looking at this. I'm going to be looking. Did you use Font Awesome to add the icons? If you didn't, 5 points is gone. All right? And if you say, well, that isn't fair, we did a thing in class. We used the Bootstrap Glyphicons as opposed to Font Awesome, but I showed you it in class how I did it. I showed you where Font Awesome was. I showed you where to add the CDN, and I showed you how to go in and bring in the different icons. All right? By now, I would think everybody could do that nav area. All right? Let's see. Okay. So, for the content page, as we talked about, I wanted some kind of an image in there. Okay. The other thing too, and if you use that image, fine. I don't care, and I don't know if any of you did. I'm not asking. All right. But if you did use that image as an example, it should look like that. In other words, it shouldn't look stretched out of shape. It shouldn't look real wide or real tall where it's out of proportion. All right. And am I going to take off for that? What I try to do is I try to look at everyone's. Sometimes I bring up everyone's. I bring up all 8 of yours and run them to see exactly where people got, because that gives me a baseline. It's not fair because I typically do them in alphabetic order. So if I did a means and I graded it a certain way, then I realized everybody else made the same mistake, then I have to go back and be scratching off stuff on his test page and whatever, and I don't want to do that. That's why I typically grade, for lack of better words, they're almost graded twice. I look through everything the first time for everybody. Then I go back and grade everyone's individually. Okay? All right. So for this input, the content page, the inputs, as we were talking about, again, you better have, if you want to get the points, text boxes, radio buttons, etc. All right. Then when we got to, this is where we had the problem, all right, was working with that content page. All right. So I'll tell you what I think the problem with mine is. So I want to show you my code so I can tell you what I think the problem with mine is. Yes.
You were saying for the inputs page that you didn't want the status or the BMI on there, when on the instructions you wanted us to put in the inputs page status and BMI.
Well,
like on D or whatever. So I didn't know if that was something.
okay,
you wanted.
then that was on me.
Okay.
I'll go back and look at the page, and that's a thing where if I take off, then you should come and argue with me. Because if you hit me with my own words, I'm not going to win the argument. All right? Fair enough. Okay. Let me close a couple of these. All right. So let's see. I think it's the inputs.cs I want to bring up. All right. You had much of this stuff already. And again, when you look at this, if you go, wow, I think mine worked or it was pretty well working and mine doesn't look like yours, that's okay. All right? I want to make sure you understand how to code. All right? I think that you should have at least a minimum of documentation in your code. All right? Again, my litmus test, I've said this before, not right here where I'm declaring variables, but if you put some code in and you say to yourself, does that need a comment? If you have to ask the question, it probably needs a comment. All right? So I use these. These were just some of my things for my scaling. And notice I had a lot of variables. In fact, I'm going to make this smaller so you can see. I had like about 14 variables. All right? Why? Well, I needed one for the height, one for the weight, one for the BMI, and one for the status. That ought to make sense. All right? Then 5 different ones for females and 5 different ones for males. Okay, you notice the total ones. Those are my counters. All right, and these I used for the averages. Okay, and then did the same exact thing for the males. All right, put nothing in page load. In the calculate, what am I doing? I wanted to clear out, I tried so many different things to get this to work. But I said when you calculate, this should change every time. Would everybody agree with that? Every time I add a new person's information in, it's a new first name, it's a new last name, it's a new height, it's a new weight, it's a new gender, and it's a new status. Now you might say, well, if I had 2 women in a world and I put in the gender doesn't change. That's not even the point. All right, I'm just clearing right here for lack of better words. I've got a clear routine, but this is clearing the session variables. Okay? Then our old if is valid. All right, so if it's valid, now that means that it passed all the validation tests. We know what those validation tests are because it was required for first name, last name, height, and weight. Plus, for height and weight, we had range validators. So we know that if it's valid, there's a first name, there's a last name, there's a height that's in range, a weight within range, and there's a gender. even if you never change the gender, even if you put in there Jeff Scott and you leave it at female, that really and truly doesn't matter because it's still valid as far as the system is concerned. All right. So now the reason I'm telling you that is I know these fields are all good. So now I can copy them into my session variables. All right. Then I called and I tried to modularize this. I figure I can't really ask you or expect you to modularize if I don't modularize. All right. So here's my BMI, and I had a routine called Calculate BMI. It's about what you think it would be, right there. Grab the weight, grab the height, and return using the formula. And I know it works. All right. And I also said, when I printed it out, I think I printed it out and formatted it to 2 decimal places. I did an F2 on it. All right. Am I right in assuming that everybody understands that routine right there, that Calculate BMI? Okay. And that we're grabbing the information from our text boxes? All right. So once I've done that, then I can go and I can throw the BMI into my session variable. That seemed to make sense to me. That would be a good time to do it. Then I wanted to determine my weight status. Now, I want you to look at something here. You'll notice if you look at it, okay, if it's less, under, over, etc. And then I'm doing almost the same thing in here. In other words, they're pretty much the same thing in both of them. So you might say, well, couldn't I have just written this as one routine? This thing that was in here that said determine weight status. All right, and yeah, I did. So originally I was going to write it at 2 thinking, well, it's going to be a different status for males and females. All right, but then I thought, well, I'm not using that yet, so I'll just write one routine. Okay, so there it is. If it's less than max under was 18.5. So if it was less than that, the status was underweight. You knew that. All right. Then, and I might have even went a little nuts here, but I said if it's greater than or equal to 18.5 and it's less than the minimum over, which was 25, your optimal weight. All right. Otherwise, if you're greater than or equal to 25, but you're less than 30, all right, you're overweight. Otherwise, you're obese. Now, I thought of putting an else in there. But to me, it didn't make sense to put an else in because I already know because my weights have been validated. So really, when you think about it, and I know this would never happen, but the smallest person was 12 inches. All right, look at it being a baby, whatever. The heaviest person was 777 pounds. Now, that's going to give them one hell of a BMI. But the point is, those are our ranges. So we already know that it has to be in there. So we know that after we figure out the BMI, the person has to be underweight, optimal weight, overweight, or obese. So to me, to even put in here an else, I didn't know what I'd put. I could have put an else in there and said status equal error. And you could do that. All right. I don't think you really have to, but you could do that. So then after I've figured out the status, I throw that in the session variable. All right. Then what I do next is going to be based off of whether they're a male or a female. So right now, in my status variables, okay, I do have all of my inputs have been done to send to my outputs page. Does that make sense? First name, the last name, the height, the weight, the BMI, and the status. Those 6 things are in there, and I know they're set. But now I've got to be working on my counters, okay? So I said if the radio button for females is checked, well, then I set my gender to female. That's the first thing I did. I added 1 to my total females counter, all right, because I know it's a female. Just in the same way, if the male was checked, I set my gender to male, and I add 1 to the total males counter. So these 2 are the same as these 2, except 1 is for females, 1 is for males. All right? Then I called the routine to do my checks. Female checks if it was for females, male checks if it was for males. All right? This you would have to pretty much do as 2 different routines. Okay? So the first thing I wanted to figure out was, you know, I'm adding to my total height and I'm adding to my total weight. Why am I doing this? So I get the average. Because the average is going to be either, you know, the total height divided by the number of people we have, or the total weight divided by the number of people we have. All right, I did the exact same thing for males. Then I did a switch on here. I already know what the status is. So if it was underweight, I added 1 to my underweight females. If it was optimal weight, added 1 to my optimal weight females. If it was overweight, added 1 to my overweight females. If it was obese, add 1 to my obese females. Here I did put a thing in here that just said break. Don't do anything else. All right. Then I set my session variables for my females. My total females, my underweight females, my optimal weight females, my overweight females, and my obese females. But I can't do the average height. I could have actually moved these 2 lines up. But then I said the average height was the total number of females divided by, all right, the total height divided by the total number of females. The average weight was the total weight divided by the total number of females. Then I put those into their session variables. Does all that make sense? I know they were being set. The way that I know they were being set, if you look up on the screen here, is I made local variables where every time I set something, right before I put it into a session variable, I dumped it out. And then I went into my watch window, in my locals window, and I was looking at those. I was setting breakpoints. They were all working, all right? But where I think I had the problem was, okay, I've got all this stuff that's being set here. Everything is being set, but it's being set inside of my inputs, correct? Somehow between going from the inputs to the outputs and then going to my totals, it's losing the value of those variables. All right? And I was getting very strange errors. I was Googling my errors and doing everything I could think of doing to try to fix what appeared to be wrong. Yes, sir.
They have a job fair going on in the other building, and they have manufacturing companies there, but all the manufacturing companies also have IT related.
Oh, okay. Is it the other building, me?
Yeah, in the other building.
Okay.
So if anybody's interested.
All right, we can finish. We can finish up in 5 minutes, and if you guys want to walk over there, you can.
So
All right.
Might be an opportunity, you never know.
Thank you.
Even though they're manufacturing, everybody has IT.
Yeah.
Same companies are over.
All right, thank you. So then, for the males, it's the same checks, except I'm adding to the appropriate male counters instead of the appropriate female counters. All right? Then in the outputs, this is working too. It's grabbing those session variables, boom. You know, it's setting everything up. All right? Maybe what I want to do here is I want to go and I want to grab all those session variables that I had on the previous page, copying them into this page. You know what I'm talking about, all my counters and stuff? Maybe I never even thought of, I just thought of that right now. Maybe that would work. I don't know. But the point is, this all works. All the output stuff works. All right? What doesn't work is when you go to the totals page and you do this, which basically says, you know, what I did was I said, hey, as long as I've got something. So I thought, well, how can I see if I got something or not? Well, as long as I've got either one female or one male, then one of those counters is going to be set. So if one of those counters was set, then I said to do all this stuff. Again, you've seen this before. All right? And then take it and dump it into the associated things that were there. None of that works.
I have a question.
Yes.
You put on the top of on your first line, you put ands? What if you
Yes.
put ors?
I tried that too.
Okay, I was gonna say, why did you put or? Never mind.
Neither one of them worked. And I could change this around and I could get different errors, but it always broke right on the first line here. It always broke right there. And if I commented that line out, of course, it broke on the next line then. See what I'm saying? So it appears as though working with these state variables, I was having a problem. Now, if you may or may not have heard what I said before, but what I was saying, and I can try it right now just to see if it works. I don't think it will, but you never know. Let's see. So in the inputs, in this is where I'm setting all those things. All right? The problem is, like I said, I want everybody to realize the progression. So you come in here and you input your information. All right? Then you should be able to either click a button or click the menu option and you go to outputs. Then you should be able to either click a button or choose the menu option and go to totals. And you start on your home page. That's the whole application, correct? All right. So in here is where I'm setting all my session variables. And I'm using those 6 in here. But with the other ones that I have, the other 8, 10, 12, whatever it is, so let's say there's 20 of them. So 6 of them are being printed out right there. The other 14, I'm trying to print out right here. But they're set here. By the time they go from here to here, their values are gone. That's the problem. All right? So what I'm going to ask you to do is to try to see if, look back at chapter 8 if you can figure out what the problem is. And we could talk about that in the next class then. You want to go over there and take a look?
I was over there earlier.
Is it worth it or not worth it?
I mean, I didn't ask about IT, but because everyone there was like for manufacturing, all the kids and stuff. There's only one thing that I talked to Shannon about. They said that they had like they looked at IT and stuff, and that was Spire, which is the new name for McLean
Yes,
Gas or
correct.
whatever. But that's the only. I didn't really look into any of the other ones.
I don't know if any of you want to go over there, you are welcome to. Otherwise, what I'm going to ask that you do is to go back, open up your book to chapter 8, and look at the stuff for session state, and either use your program or the one I gave you, and see if you can figure out how to get these variables in there. All right? And like I said, I'll need yours, and when Tiffany comes, I'll need hers too. So I'm kind of giving you a little glimpse into the window of how this is graded. All right, so the kind of stuff that I'm looking for. And I'm going to have to adjust this because, hell, I didn't get mine to work for those final counters. So I don't know if any of you did or not, but whether you did or not, let's say half of you did and half of you didn't. Well, those who did, okay, maybe you'll get some extra credit or something, and if you didn't, I'm not taking off for it. That's what I'm saying. Now, she'll be here in about an hour. She told me she was going to try to get here at 2:25. Have you heard from Tiffany today? Okay, that's her 4th time. I just want to make sure that she knows that, so.
I'm surprised that she's in.
Well, that's interesting.
So that job fair is not very good.
I don't think it was geared towards IT, but I mean, it was just for like a manufacturing day for a bunch of like students that came in. So I mean,
It doesn't seem like any of them are for us though, so far.
no. I mean, this one wasn't meant to be like a job fair necessarily. It was just like they had a manufacturing day and a bunch of companies came in and like told them what manufacturing was about and
How was it?
all that.
Well, last time I didn't let you drive there, but there's like no cars in there, so right?
What at the job fair?
Yeah. Yeah, like before they were like, I guess everybody parked in that parking lot.
I think they're.
I think they're in the back. Like,
I don't know if they're at the actual job fair place or if they're in. They were in Diesel when we first went. So I don't know if they're still
That's where
there.
they're at.
they're in Diesel.
They might be like in Diesel, like right connected to the building.
So like,
Go downstairs, go to the middle of the hallway, and then go that way.
I don't know if they're still there. Or they might have moved, but I don't know. They should be if you go downstairs.
I saw the booths.
the what?
I saw the booths.
What
The
down in
job
the Diesel?
fair outside. Like the sign. Like I got outside and I saw that nobody was out there, so I was like, "It's weird. I'm gonna drive." But then
I would check there first.
the other building.
No, I would check. I mean, unless they change the spot, I don't know.
No, go downstairs, go through the middle.
What middle? I'm gonna go to the vending machine place.
Yeah, it's across from it.
It's like a long hallway that
Are you
says.
going or not?
It's a hallway that says "Put your
Okay,
glasses
so
on"
no.
at the door.
I know that teacher. It's that teacher's classroom. What if I walk in and it's not?
Just go look through the little thing.
What's wrong with you?
That might be right.
Yeah,
Do you want like an escort? Is that what you're looking for?
No, I just don't.
Well, either way, you're not gonna find anything there, so.
I'm just giving myself as my goal. Oh,
You just wanted to drive.
yeah.
Something fun in that hallway. It is.
You can pause this thing.
But no, even like the bigger ones aren't geared towards our stuff, anyways.
Well,
Like our IT is a little different than what people expect.
yeah.
usually.
Well, I mean, our program's also really new. So,
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's usually more opportunities in
On your own.
in the St. Well, that and in St. Louis than there are here right now.
Yeah.
The only places that we went to, so the company that came in here for a deal, they had, I don't even remember what it was, but I ended up getting a job with them from here, but it was like not what we were doing. It was like they had SQL Server, but like they had their own program and CSS and everything that they did, and like
Their own program.
yeah, like everything
CSS.
was like grouped. There was no CSS involved at all. Like we didn't put any like their sites were all like their own program, like their own like language kind of thing. Like it wasn't like actually like a programming language. Like they made it for themselves and like their in-house company. So like we couldn't change any of it. So it was super weird. Yeah.
Yeah, that's I don't like that.
So I basically just went on there and made screens for them.
That can end up being
I
pretty
got it.
generic if it's not like a crazy jump in it.
It was not my effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't work with SQL Server or anything, and it wasn't even like, it wasn't even really that database work at all, so that wasn't much. Yeah. So, I don't know, I just kind of depends on
To be honest, I don't even feel like talking to Miss Sika today.
I forgot that she was coming in. I have no energy right now at all.
Yeah.
I was up till like 4 last night.
I know what you mean.
Well, I had the ambassador thing this morning at 8. I had to be here. I had to. I woke up at, yeah, I had to be here at 8:30. I woke up at 8:20. I was up till 4. I slept through 2 alarms. Woke up on the 3rd. I'm like, I should probably be up by now. The reason I'm late is because I'm coming from work. So like,
why do you just do
I'll
the same
leave work.
thing? Like,
What I'll try and do is I'll try and get food
page.
either around there and then just drive or around here, and
Like,
just
just
depending on how
copy
long
the-
it takes sometimes. Like Taco Bell was clearly not something I first
Or
chose,
it's
but
Right.
it was faster. So I had an interview, so move up in the company I'm working on right now. I'm not gonna work for them
so-
anymore, but I mean,
Anyways,
they're
we're doing
it's a
inputs,
startup,
right? Yeah.
and it's at Main Street. So
You say Charles?
yeah,
Okay.
you know where that the old post office is? That's where I live from. Yeah, right across the street is like, so looking out those like, you know, those huge stairs. Okay, so looking out from there to, as you're looking downstairs, to the left, that's the building we're moving into. It's like Aspect right now or something. They're
What's that
moving
doing?
from there to somewhere else, and we're getting that building.
That's
So we bought that out because we're getting bigger.
session
And then
variables that
across
you,
the street
out-
is an
put
annex
into-
building
put
of
into the
that
output stream.
OPO thing.
Putting that to
So like, I'm
Yeah.
working from like a corner office center right now. So
Same with the session GMI.
it's not
Same
what I
with
want to do with coding.
this.
I have not seen anything like this.
That you save
Yeah, it's
to
all like,
total screen.
it's all like this.
Okay.
Like we get in
Just save it from
iPads
one screen
and
to the
like
next.
PCs and stuff, and we
Why don't you do
re-image them.
You
And
can
then
do it on one
put our own build on them.
Re-image them.
Like,
So that
you know how when you first
these work.
unbox like a computer or
What is it?
something like that, a laptop, right? Let's say.
Just thought that
When you
out.
first unbox, you turn on it because you like,
The
oh, you
actual
update your
focus
product
page
feed and all this kind of
tries
stuff,
to
and then
put 'em
boom, you have a laptop. Well, but we do is when we first run it,
when he tries to do it.
instead of letting it run through its first process, first run, we go to the boot menu and we actually like put our own image on our own
Okay.
operating system on it. So like
Mm.
it's still Windows 10
Is he
or Windows
using
7 or
one-
whatever the
It's
thing
one
is,
of
but it's they add a thing called persistent suite on it.
Oh,
And so what it does is if it's like a
Anyways,
self-healing
this is
kind of
one
thing.
thing.
So like for example,
He's writing them
if
all in
their
there as
PCs are
strings,
freaking out or
but then
something,
he's calling them
we can remote
as
into their laptop
images.
and like
Yes,
fix what's wrong
so that-
with this certain
That's
program and like
one
screen
problem.
command. So like they could just take control of my laptop and just do whatever they needed to do and they'll get off. That's what we do. So like a lot of people have issues and so they just call in and then we're like, okay. So we go and try and fix it. That's kinda what we do. But a lot of them is just like processing requests and all of that. And I basically was in charge of when I got there. They
Yeah,
were
it's
originally
almost
just
like
getting
variables.
iPads, figuring out all the information, and then just manually going through each iPad and putting in what they want. And it just took like an hour and a half just to do updates and all this shit. So, because you know how long it takes for you to update an iPhone? Imagine an iPad that's like way slower. It's all so exactly. So, and it's all Wi-Fi, so it's even worse. So we said, nope, not gonna do that. So I built or like I was able to work with Apple and get like a configurator for it. And I cut that time in half. So they want me to do it, but I don't think it's good. Yeah, I am.
Badass.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool, but it's like, it's not what I want to do. Like, I'll be there, like, looking at programming videos. Yeah. And just, like, looking up other stuff while waiting for things to go.
How did you find that job?
My neighbor owns the company.
Oh.
Or, like, up the street from me, like, he bought the company and started it up, kind of. Like, he bought the people that started it. And so, he owned it. And then, they've been building on it ever since. And then they changed their name when they started getting bigger. So, another Wheelhouse Solutions. Yeah, I mean, he owns like 3 different places. So, like, he just runs like the businesses. That's kind of cool, but yeah. So almost got a job at this place called One Space that my friend works at, and he makes like 70K, so he's living large. But he and it's like a starting job, so he does so much stuff and he knows so much more than I do with this like field he like because he's immersed in it. And like I wish I would have been able to get a job, but the problem is the building is in Illinois. So I've been like an hour hike from me every single day. And that's both ways. So I just was like he's like, you could live with me, I live in Illinois Heights and like I'm like, hey rent, I wanna make money. So well no, I've been there another Illinois now. So that would have been a really cool internship though. Because they do like what I wanna do. Like they do what they call sprints. And so like they'll get a project, let's say it's a website or whatever. And it'll be there'll be like a database hooked up to it and like each person has a different part in this project. And it's a sprint, so like you have like you're given like so many projects. I think it's like 2 or 3 or something you said. And you work on those projects. You're coding for those projects. Depending on what your thing is, if you're back end, like PHP stuff, or if you're like front end, JavaScript, React, whatever you need to use. And they go through and do everything that they can for it, and then they pass it to the next person. And so like it just goes down the line. And if they have questions or whatever, or if they have issues, they just go back to other people and they try and get them done. And like you try and like I said, I'm not especially beat the clock, but like you want to get it done like in a timely manner. If you get it done early, then you get paid to do research or just like hang out and help other people. So like there's an incentive for getting it done, but like getting it done well too. So like it's pretty cool. And I don't know. There's like performance based like bonuses and all this. It's so cool. I wish I would work there. But yeah, this is badass. So like there's places out there like that that do that though. Like they just took on Microsoft as a client. Yeah, that's fine. So they're pretty big. So
There's this guy on the website, and he went to Webster, I think, and he's like coding like what we're doing, and I'm not sure like what we're using this, but he works for Microsoft or some kind of company underneath that Microsoft, and like my friends say that he like really just plays ping pong at home. Like he works like a small now,
Yeah.
but like he like plays ping pong and like has like beer pong, but like
Yeah,
outside, but like
exactly.
just bullshit like that.
Yep.
So, like,
is the thing now is the cool thing with like the IT field. A lot of people now are looking more towards like comfort in the workplace and like more like not like laid back, but like more relaxed and like you like friendly or like environment, like good environment, because that means good work, like good workplace, good work environment. So and like everyone gets close and all that. So like I was saying, the other company my friend works at, they've got full bars. So there's 3 bars
in your building?
in their building. They've got
So when you get off, you just go have a beer, or like you're
Yeah,
like have
so-
a beer on Friday
yeah, so
and like.
you can after I think it's after 4 on Friday or something like that. Like you can drink whatever as long as you get home. But like you can drink like after 4 like every day if you want. So like you can you can drink, but like you can't do it while you're working. Like you can do it on like a break or whatever. That's fine.
And Sierra's like that too.
What?
And Sierra.
Yeah. So I mean, like they've got pool tables, ping pong tables. They've got a bowling alley in their basement. It's
They've
freaking
got a
awesome.
high turnover rate though.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But he loves it though.
And my boyfriend's friend, he works for Square. It's like those little like the cubes that
Yeah.
like plug into the Apple or
Yeah.
charging cord. They like he can like drink while he's like working. Like he does like call some kind of bullshit. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
it's
he does all kinds of crazy stuff. Like he can work from home. They give you unlimited paid vacation because they like it's like the new laid back, friendly,
Mental health
whatever.
deal,
Yeah,
yeah.
like
That's
they care
the
that
new big
much
thing.
and like he just like can do whatever he wants and they don't care. It's like
Yeah.
I need to work for Square. What the heck?
Yeah, there's so many great companies out there. The hardest thing is like finding them and getting in.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, like I talked to my friend about doing something there, but it's so hard with like one, it's too far away for me. Like I didn't want to have to drive with traffic there and back 3 hours a day. I was getting more. But the good thing was, so he said, I was like, gas money's gonna be terrible. I'm not gonna have a life. I'm gonna have to get up at like 6 a.m. just to get there. and then come home. This is during the summer, and then come home at like 5. I won't get home till like 6:30, 7 o'clock, depending on how bad the traffic is. 5, 6:30, and then I have to go to the gym. I have to do this or whatever, like something like that.
Like stuff
And I wouldn't
like
have
that.
anything to do. Yeah, and I wouldn't have any life basically, except work, which makes sense, but still, that's like.
That stuff sucks.
Yeah, and it's just, I didn't feel like having like essentially an 11-hour work day when really it's just an 8-hour drive, yeah. So, I just, the good thing was, so it was either that job or the one that I took that had the weird program deal that I was telling you about
Oh,
beforehand,
yeah.
and the SQL server. It's one of those two that I had to choose, and I chose the one that was here because it was 5 minutes from my house. And so I just did that, and I did some of it, but the one that was in one space was like 22 an hour. I was like, yeah, I was considering highly, but I had to find a place that was closer, and it just,
And it would basically be,
it'd be basically living on my own for 3 months.
and that
Which is
sucks,
fine.
because no matter how much money you made an hour, it's still going towards,
Still going
you're
to rent.
spending it, it's
Yeah,
not.
it's going to rent. Yeah. That was my thought process too.
No more than that, please.
Yeah. So, I don't know. And that's how you wear down your car.
Hmm?
That's how you wear down your car. That's how you wear down your car too.
Oh, I'm like, what? What? Yeah, that is how you run on your car. And your car can't afford it. With the full important to get your back up and
Yeah.
whatever it is.
That thing's not.
Trade it in.
You know I would. When the bank can set up the whatever you want to work on. So. What?
I wasn't laughing at y'all.
No, I. Yeah. I don't know if that's on. That'd be so weird for just sitting here talking and it's on. I just wouldn't do it. But that's fine. I'm gonna do how to do this stuff. Utility page. I did mine completely different thing, but I did like a whole class and everything. And just having such a variable and
Why don't you leave it?
I don't know how to do it that way.
What way?
I did mine like this. Sorry, let me just bring it in. So I didn't finish the total page because I couldn't get it to work what I wanted to, so I had to delete things I got mad. So I did mine like this. So I actually made a class, a BMI class that he said in here. He said, be sure to create a BMI class that holds some information essentially with necessary. He didn't do that. He didn't do that. So this is what I did. I made like a BMI class, first and last name, if I had both. So that was like my class I did, and then when I went into my inputs, I actually like went in and if there's no like BMI class made, then run this. So otherwise, just keep that true and just do it. And then for each time, this is gonna make a class. So take the information from the text boxes and labels and enter that into it. And the text box stuff. And then when I click calculate, convert all the stuff. This does, this is what actually takes, creates a new entry, takes the entry in from each thing. And then when I clear it, obviously clears everything. But this is like, it also makes the entry edge go to the next page. So then I put that on the next page. Run the page so that I have that entry. There's the session. Has the labels of what they equal. So then it just makes it what it is. And then I haven't done the totals page because I couldn't connect to anything. I tried like, I had probably 200 lines of code here and it just didn't work. I just got an error, so I didn't do it at all.
So I got the other day with that test.
I guess, because I couldn't get it even to like pull up or anything. I made the actual page, but I could not get the variables to pull up, so I just got rid of that. And I started with it.
Maybe that's a different cover.
Yeah, so I think that's what I just kind of call it stuff. But I didn't know this, so I don't know how to do things. So I don't know. We'll see.
Do you all have questions for Ms. Zika when she comes? Have you looked at the data? Have you become one with the data?
No. I'm getting intimate with the data.
I can always count it even to be the voice of reason.
Yep.
So, I did mine pretty different. Well, not really different, but I did mine a little different than yours. You did-
I'd expect that.
So you did yours in like just straight session variables. I made a class for mine and did like a BMI class. I didn't get the totals page to work, and I just ended up.
I've got a class.
You have a BMI class?
Yes,
Oh, I didn't see that part. Because I have that with like the gets and sets and everything. But
I don't know how you could do it without a class.
Right,
Maybe it's possible to do that, I don't know.
well, my problem was I couldn't get the total stuff. It just gave me like a bunch of errors, so I
Yes.
just deleted it because it was just too hard to figure out. So.
Did you get yours to work for those totals? No? Did you? Did you get yours to work? Did you get totals? No?
I got my inputs and outputs.
You got yours to work? Okay. Did you, I mean?
So I'll have to like go in and know it more.
Well, one thing I did today was, bless you, I decided that before I go over and redo, bless you, before we go back and redo the test, I went back and really, I spent over an hour rereading chapter 13. And then I thought, well, there's probably a few things in here that when I went over them with you, we did kind of fast. So we're going to go over some of that stuff on Monday, and then we're going to do the test. All right. I've got all the queries done for the test, and I've created the pages for the other ones, and I've got just about all the first one done. All right.
I just couldn't find a way to connect them. That was the main issue I was having.
Understood.